So here we are finishing the maple syrup on the stove. And you can see as the syrup gets more concentrated with sugar and less water, the bubbles get smaller. It's not that rolling boil it was at first. You'll also see it starts to develop a skin on the top. I'm going to take the spoon and try to show you what I mean. You see how that surface moves? So there's nothing wrong with the skin on the top. It's perfectly edible. If you want to spoon it off and put it in a bowl and save it for when it cools, you can. But what you will notice is the skin takes away from the surface area that boils. You can see the bubbles are staying right along this edge, just beyond the skin. So that's the main advantage for clearing it off, is to increase your surface area. And the more surface area you have, the faster it boils down. So now I'll show you the hydrometer, which we use to test whether it's ready to be called syrup or whether it's still water. You can see this is still quite runny, but I'll still demonstrate the process. Alright, so what I have here is a hydrometer. You can see it's basically a little clear glass tube with, oops, I'll try to get out of the steam, with some measurements, and we're shooting for in between these two red lines. And we want those two red lines to be, bring this over here in the light too, to be floating right about there. So anywhere in this range would be acceptable. Hydrometer essentially measures the density of the liquid. So we're going to pour some liquid into this container and we're going to see where the hydrometer rests. And this stuff is very sticky at this point. It may not be syrup yet, but it'll definitely make a mess. And you don't have to fill it all the way to the top because the little hydrometer itself is going to take up some space. Basically, if you have enough liquid to float it, that's all you need. You hear it sink all the way to the bottom when I put it in. It's not ready yet. And you'll see that's that range we're shooting for right there. Where it's red, so if I let it drop, it's all the way to the bottom. So we're not done yet. This will be very hot now, so be careful. I'll pour all this back in. And we'll let it boil a little longer. And at this point, you just got to keep checking it. And you got to watch it pretty carefully because it can boil over very easily. It'll foam all up and spill over the sides of the pan. So at this point I brought it in the house because it's a lot easier to keep an eye on. So here's an example of when the syrup is getting close. Let's see if I get some good light on this. So I filled my tube here and you can see that the hydrometer no longer sinks to the bottom. For example, that would be the bottom. You can see it floats. Now I say it's almost done because we're not quite at that red line. We need a little more boiling yet. We're definitely not at the bottom red line. So I'm going to pour it back in and we'll keep going. This is what the syrup looks like at this point. Alright, the syrup is finished. You'll see if I take the hydrometer and I push it down in. There's the first red line. And the second red line is right there. So we're right in the range. Which is perfect. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. Got a little bit, I guess I don't have a little bit left in there. I'll pull this guy out. It's still rather liquid looking, so you'll see when I pour that. But you gotta keep in mind, this stuff is really hot. And when you go to put this on your pancakes, it's gonna be a lot cooler and a lot stickier. So don't be fooled if it still looks runny. It's gonna solidify a lot. So I shut the stove off, and the next step will be to pot it. And I got this hydrometer from a place called tapmytrees.com, I think it was. And I ordered this nice little kit that talks about it. Alright, so we'll wait and we'll try it again later. This is the strainer that we purchased, that we strained the syrup with. You can see it's a really fine mesh material. It really seems to clean out any particles that might have gotten in the syrup that you wouldn't want in the finished product. And I strain the syrup before I put it on the stove for the finished product. I like to strain it when I bring it in from outside, because once it's outside, you know, there's always a chance that you get a little bit of dirt in it or some dust or who knows what. So this syrup has been completely strained, and it's good to strain it before you get to the finished stage, because it gets really thick, and the thicker it is, the harder it is to strain. And I bought this strainer at the Tap My Trees website also. So it's maple syrup grade, you know, food grade, to catch everything. So that's it. We're all done making syrup. The next step is to bottle this and then enjoy.